Good afternoon, everyone. We're just going to wait about 20 to 30 seconds so that people can get logged in here, and then we will begin with this afternoon's webinar. All right, good afternoon. It's wonderful to see so many of you here on here with us today. Welcome to our webinar, Balancing Customer Choice and E-Commerce Profitability and Uncertainty. My name is Amanda Armendariz. I am the editor of PARCEL Media, and we at PARCEL Media would like to thank Transportation Insight for making this webinar completely complimentary for our audience. Now, before I introduce our speakers, I just want to go over a couple of housekeeping items. The first one is this is an interactive webinar. We would love to answer your questions. So please feel free to submit questions at any time, and we will get to as many as possible at the end of the presentation. The second thing to note is that this webinar will be archived for 12 months, so you can view it again, you can share it with a colleague, and you just need to use that same registration link that you used to log on today. Our speakers today are Robyn Meyer, Partner, Enterprise Solutions for Transportation Insight, and Reed Jacob, Director of Client Solutions for Transportation Insight. We are looking forward to a fantastic presentation. So with that, I will hand it off to Reed.
Great, Amanda. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Guys, Robyn and I bring 45 years experience. That includes benefit of visibility into thousands of supply chains over our career. And currently, we are working with hundreds of clients who are dealing with the challenges of the COVID-19 environment. Today, we are looking forward to sharing what we are seeing and discussing the art of the possible. For the last 25 years, e-commerce has been an ever-changing market space with multiple strategies to reach the consumer, from brick and mortar to e-commerce, omni-channel, and now omni-web, including different delivering methods such as BOPIS, curbside delivery, lockers, and drones. Building the best strategy to drive sales while keeping costs manageable is no easy feat. Balancing customer choice and a level of uncertainty is difficult. Now, when you add COVID-19, we are in unprecedented times. It's hard to imagine a more volatile market.
Yeah, Reed, it definitely is. I mean, 2 months ago, who would have thought all our kids would be learning from home? And the people who travel like you and I would be stuck working from their home as well. You know, with that being said, everybody's ordering online. So we're going to talk a lot today about some of those challenges based on those changes.
Yeah, no doubt, Robyn. And, you know, it's even people buying cars from the comfort of their home is becoming the new norm.
It's funny you mention that because my neighbor actually just purchased his dream car. All I've heard about since I met him 8 years ago was when he was going to buy this car. He purchased it last week, and then his wife wouldn't let him drive it. It sat in the driveway for 3 days so she could make sure there was no coronavirus in it. So it's definitely a volatile time for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Uncertainty abounds, and no one has a crystal ball. Much of this is learning as we go. We're going to talk about strategies in the marketplace. We're going to talk about carrier responses and how you can manage through the pandemic to the new normal with actionable data and strong business intelligence. During the last 23 years, we have faced many challenges. COVID-19 is the 8th major supply chain economic trial that we're enduring. But if you look back at history, let's look at 1997, for example. The UPS Teamster strike shut down the largest parcel carrier in North America for 16 days. FedEx and the United States Postal Office tried to fill in. However, the volumes were too crippling. As the strike date neared, both carriers stopped taking on new shippers and limited the amount of volume that they would take from existing customers. While the strike lasted just over 2 weeks, the impact on supply chains continued for 6 to 8 months, and it cost UPS over $70 million. When you look at today, residential deliveries are one of the most expensive deliveries in the parcel network. In 2005, UPS deliveries were 80% commercial and 20% residential. Due to the growth of e-commerce in 2020, pre-COVID-19, UPS deliveries were 50-50, 50 commercial, 50 residential. Deliveries now, tracking during COVID-19, are 30-70, 30% commercial, 70% residential. This week on UPS's earnings call, the focus is clearly on managing cost. Several key indicators that UPS uses to measure profitability have shown increases due to the increase in residential deliveries. Miles per driver showed a 10% increase. Stops per driver showed a 15% increase. But UPS is not alone in being impacted by COVID-19. The FedEx network is commercially leaning, and they are starting to control the volumes from their larger residential shippers in their network. The challenges are coming. If you look at the quote at the bottom of the slide here, the crisis is widening the digital divide among those who made earlier investments in e-commerce and those who didn't. In other words, companies that built the supply chain through trial and error versus companies that are starting from scratch today.
So as Reed mentioned, the shift from commercial to residential has been staggering. And COVID has brought large chunks of the $18 trillion U.S. economy to a standstill. So how do we compete against Amazon has been one focus of the e-com industry for years. It's a question that we get often in our conversations with clients and leaders in the market. And because they're considered a leader in e-commerce advantage, they're being closely watched during these unstable times. So what has changed?
You know, Robyn, I think one of the things that has been pointed out is Amazon has created their own nightmare. They've increased customers' expectation for speedy delivery. The norm from an Amazon order was 2 or even 1 day delivery. And now they're having a week to 10-day delivery online on some items, causing customers to look for alternative sources.
You know, it's interesting you bring that up. I actually did that the other day. My daughter wanted a paint by number, and I went on Amazon, and it was a little over a 2-week delivery time frame. And so I went on Joann Fabrics, ordered the paint by number, and I had it within 4 days. So will I go back to Amazon, you know, after this is over, or will I do something like I did the other day? I don't know the answer to that yet, but it's definitely a challenge. You know, they've been painted and touted as maybe the only coronavirus-proof stock, but truly is it? You know, they've had some struggles, and that's where, you know, other retailers and manufacturers in the market are looking at them now as an example of how are they managing this and how are they changing their current processes to limit the impact. So the first thing they've done is they've shifted focus to try and make an attempt at controlling volume within their network, right? So you've talked a lot about how the e-commerce residential deliveries have been impacted with coronavirus, and it's definitely impacting Amazon. A few ways they've done that. They've stopped competing directly with UPS and FedEx. So many of you on the phone may know about the beta they rolled out at the beginning, well, end of last year really, where they were offering to ship certain packages for clients that were not fulfilling on Amazon. They've come out recently and told those clients and those shippers that they're going to stop doing that as of June 1st. So now you've got quite a few companies that are in limbo trying to find an alternative provider, right? They also have stopped upselling to keep their fulfillment volume manageable. They've done that by not adding suppliers to their network. They've got no more target buying. So, you know, used to be when you went on Amazon, if you bought something, they would say, would you like to buy this as well? That's really gone away. If you go on and look, that bottom streamer doesn't really pop up as much anymore. And they've even talked about moving Prime Day. So, but due to their supply chain uniqueness, they've been able to make some decisions that others may not be able to make. The challenge is that they've actually lost that golden child belief, right? You're seeing it from the White House all the way down to the customer, as Reed mentioned. You know, they've had the struggles with the USPS rate hike and the president saying, hey, start charging. Amazon, what you charge everyone else, right, which is going to be a challenge moving forward. They've also lost their Pentagon contract to Microsoft. That was a struggle at the end of the year. That's not a COVID thing, but it did happen. And they've been dealing with a lot of employee discontent. A lot of the blogs and the documents that I read right now really struggles with, are they keeping their employees safe? Are their drivers and their DC workers safe? You've seen a lot about walkouts. And you've also had customer loyalty, right? We talked a little bit about how I diverted and went to Joanne. I'm hearing that from more and more of the people I talk to in this industry, and then just in general, neighbors and so forth. So customer loyalty has taken a real hit. But where they've really looked at is essential versus non-essential fulfillment. And that's led a lot of their suppliers to question their decision making, right? What makes one dog leash essential while another's not? Is it more driven by the definition of essential, or is it more driven by their network and their DC allocation? So as things continue to evolve in that line between essential and non-essential, it's really become fairly blurry. It's actually, I heard it said the other day, it's become the haves and have-nots. So the stores that are offering essentials are really struggling with different things than the stores that are offering the non-essentials or the retailers, right? And so the essentials are really based on, how do I look at all of the things that I need to look at and do so while maintaining business, right? They are running 150 miles an hour and they're having to do all of this while look at how do I manage that? So, they're trying to keep their consumers and their employees safe. You're hearing about DC shutdowns in stores, right? Employee satisfaction. Are they increasing their pay for their employees? Are they recognizing the need for employee satisfaction? Inventory replenishment, we're going to talk a little bit about that in a bit. That's huge, right? It's very hard to look at where their inventory is because they're so focused on getting it to the consumer. And then they're having to look at alternative service. We've heard a lot in the last week about the parcel carriers going to some of these essential providers, essential retailers, and saying, hey, we're going to have to cap your pickups. Your volume is through the roof. And that's really impacting how they're going to market. Very similar to the UPS shutdowns Reed mentioned a few moments ago. While the have-nots are really focused on how do we move forward, right? How do we enhance our delivery services so clients come back? How do we establish these rapid BOPUS and curbside pickup services? I saw a stat today that BOPUS orders have increased 208% April 1st to the 20th compared to the same period a year ago. So if you didn't have buy online and pick up in store, or you didn't have curbside pickup, you're having to establish that while also challenged with a growth model of 208%. They're also focused on website efficiency and customer experience. So is the website a good tool for them to use? Are their customers staying and often converting the cart to purchase? How are they managing all of that? And then overall, how do they build an improved model while not breaking the bank, right? They don't have a lot of revenue coming in. They're not able to service a whole lot of clients. And so how do they pay their bills, and do all of that while they're focused on just maintaining business? We're hearing a lot in the industry about retailers and manufacturers that may not make it back from this. And that's a scary thought. So how do you build your network and your customer base in terms of servicing them without breaking the bank during this time of non-revenue? So the other thing that we're hearing a lot of is what makes a provider essential versus non-essential. Many of the small retailers I talked to today are really frustrated by the fact that because they don't sell bleach or groceries, they're not able to sell their clothes. And that's a real challenge in this market today, because if you look, experts are saying it'll possibly come back around school time, right? Back to school supplies, wardrobes, decorations, those types of things. By that point, many of the small retailers are worried that the mom may have already gone out and bought the clothes when she was buying the groceries at the same time. And so there's a little bit of a challenge there. So many of the experts feel that the have-nots may actually be in a more sustainable spot when this is all over if we can figure out how to get past that big box store versus the small retailer. They've had the time to evaluate their supply chains and focus on improving the areas in need.
Thanks, Robyn. And there's no doubt. We talked about the investment in the digital age, and I saw this on LinkedIn, and it really resonated. How many people, when they went to bed on March 12th, were just thinking COVID-19 was a bad flu? The average American was not prepared for the national emergency announcement that happened the next day, or what happened, or what was in store for the immediate future. There is no doubt that COVID-19 accelerated the digital transformation. And so what does that mean to us from a new normal? I have a couple quotes or paraphrases I like to learn from. One of them I posted on LinkedIn like a week or two ago, and it's, experience is a hard teacher because she gives the test first and the lesson afterwards. And that was a baseball player that shared that, but that's what we're experiencing right now. We're learning as we go. And there are things that are happening that we're having to quickly change and adjust. I also wanted to paraphrase from the UPS CEO's statement from the call earlier this week. He said, the old normal is gone and the new normal is not yet here. This is a transition in process, and there's no doubt that it's been a steep hill put before us because of COVID-19. You know, just some examples, we saw Best Buy originally restricted their in-home delivery. However, over the last 3 weeks, they've been able to establish procedures and are now ready to offer that option again. In addition to starting contactless curbside service, in which a consumer can order online and pick up the product within an hour at the store. That's, as Robyn spoke about, was a rapid BOPUS creation for companies. And they also always had the home delivery, which they can deliver within 2 to 3 days. Best Buy is also at a point where they're looking at opening stores and potentially doing it by appointment only initially, just to maintain customer and employee safe shopping habits. Retailers like Best Buy have grown into the 2020 version of service merchandise. Instead of walking into the store to place an order, the consumer can research and see the product online, order the product from the comfort of their own home, and then pick it up within an hour without ever leaving their car. We have one nationwide clothing retail chain that has expanded its fulfillment network from their normal distribution facilities to include 36 of their largest regional stores. This helps with speed to consumer. It also lowers transportation costs, and it helps them with inventory management. COVID-19 has accelerated the use for cases of drone deliveries, in healthcare and retail. CVS and UPS Forward Freight are rolling out prescription deliveries in Central Florida. Final mile delivery via drones has long been a target for UPS and many of the retailers. As we work through the current state and emerge on the other side, it's companies that can harness the power of their data that will be able to make informed decisions and adjust to the new normal.
So how do we move forward? We're going to talk a little bit now about what we're hearing from clients and leaders in the supply chain industry on what they're looking to do to drive business post-COVID. So there's no doubt that the e-commerce penetration will increase significantly as more consumers become comfortable and confident in this new buying experience. I, for one, will probably never set foot in a grocery store again. You know, my friends and neighbors had been going on and on about how amazing grocery delivery was in day-to-day life, but I had never actually taken the plunge until now, right? And man, they were right. And I'm not the only one. I mean, U.S. online grocery sales have increased 110% for daily average online sales. I mean, that tells you right there that more and more people are open and accepting of being able to do online sales. And one of the things that people often come back with is, you know, is it generational, right? And it's probably a little bit. We're hearing a little bit of news out there that it could be, you know, the younger generation and the mid-generation. The older generation may still struggle. But I'll tell you personally, you know, my mom and dad have gotten very used to shopping on Amazon in this whole pandemic, and I've helped them learn how to do it. And so I don't know if they'll actually go back either. So what's the lesson companies can take from this crisis? You know, the big one is use this opportunity to identify scalability bottlenecks in your business, right? Capture the data that you're getting now. When the crisis has slowed, you can look at it critically to understand how your business needs updated with more elasticity around capacity and demand. The successful post-COVID company will need to be agile, right? You're going to need to be able to move your network around and be able to quickly shift how you allocate products throughout those distribution areas and adjust the timing of product receipt and shipment. You know, the beginning of the year, we were really talking about the struggle in getting inventory and market products from China and Asia and, you know, even Africa. And now, you know, those are opening back up, but now how do we get the product to the consumer? So predictable capacity, if you all have been on any other webinars recently, it's what I'm hearing all the time. I listen in on a lot of them, and it's the new buzzword along with digital transformation. But customers right now, they're behaving unpredictably, and it's impacting the supply chain, it's impacting last mile delivery, and it's even impacting what goods stores can keep in stock. You know, for years and years, retailers have been using AI and machine learning to analyze data, allowing them to forecast everything from stock inventory to transportation needs. But that only works when you have data that accurately predicts behavior. This crisis has turned that on its head. It's challenging for companies in both B2B and B2C to determine what data they actually need to be looking at. You know, short-lived spikes in essential goods are really leading it, but that isn't steady state. You know, I doubt very seriously that Procter & Gamble was concerned about the revenues from their toilet paper at the beginning of the year, but now you have all these Americans that have gone out and bought a year's worth of toilet paper, and they're not going to need it when COVID opens the doors and goes away, right? And so what's going to happen to Procter & Gamble's revenues based on that? You know, what's the profitability impact of that? And then how did they know whether to have that or not on stock and ready to go? So, you know, one merchandise category that analysts have been studying is apparel. And as it contributes to a larger share of retail spending, right? 1 in 4 of the top 1,000 retailers based in North America sell online apparel or accessories. During the coronavirus pandemic, online apparel sales increased 34% year over year in March, with comfy clothes like pajamas, right, leading the charge. They increased at 143%. So there's a contrast to the total retail sales that we keep hearing are plummeting at 52%, 50% overall. But it's knowing that that product is out there and where that product is. So having an immediate insight into where your inventory is at any given moment will help companies beat corona and pandemics moving forward. The other piece is you've got to have a multi-node distributed supply chain. Any company that has that is going to have the advantage. So when you look at your DCs, do you have warehouse partners in place? Do you have alternative carriers? You know, we talked a little bit about some of the carriers have reached out to retailers in the last 7 days and said, look, I'm going to start capping your volumes. Well, the retailer that didn't have an alternative carrier in play would struggle, right? Luckily for us, most of our clients that we've heard this from had a secondary carrier that they just diverted the inventory to. And then you're going to need to have a scalable network. That's huge. You know which way to push your network to be profitable, know which areas of the country to leverage. Those are all things that are going to matter as we move forward from corona. And once again, you know, capture the data now. It's really important. You know, you might not have the time to analyze it today, but by holding on to that data and having it, you can take a look at it later on. So, you know, I was talking with a client a few weeks ago when all of this was going on, and we were discussing how COVID had impacted her business. And she said, Robyn, if I knew then what I know now, I would have done so many things differently. I would have had several small warehouse partnerships spread throughout the country to complement my DCs. You know, there's options out there at looking at sending a few of your more profitable or most selling SKUs to warehouse partners and having agreements set up for them to do delivery. That way, if things like this happen, you can just divert to them. She said, I wish I could have redirected my inventory once my DC states went into shelter in place. For her, she's not an essential provider, so when that happened, it really cut off her ability to make revenue. And then she said, I would have tested alternative transportation partners in every mode. She said, I had them in parcel, but I didn't have them in LTL. She's like, I would have tested every one in every mode for both inbound and outbound, and I would have invested in inventory visibility. So as we talked about a little bit ago, knowing where your inventory is at every single point in time is extremely important. You know, we talk about BOPUS and setting BOPUS up. And the challenge with buy online, pick up in store when we're all running ragged like we were before COVID is that you can have a $10 sweater your customer goes online and buys, and it can be showing in your store, but where is it in that store? How do you remain profitable, right? And so with all of that going on, you know, it would have been great to have inventory visibility by DC, by location, by store. All of those pieces matter. So I took that information and I went to another large retailer, this one completely e-commerce, and I said, what would you have done differently? And he said, I would have formed partnerships with other supply chains to diversify my network. It would have really helped me to have had partners that were versed in delivering medical consumers now that I'm fully PPE. They've adjusted their entire platform to not do what they did before, but now manufacture and distribute PPE gear. And so they don't have the same addresses, the same network, the same distribution model because they're delivering to entirely different aspects of the consumer. And so that's big, right? Understanding that. So, I mean, you know, you look at supply chain as a whole, even people outside our industry now know the definition of supply chain. You hear about it on the news all the time. So as we've had more and more conversations with our clients and other supply chain leaders, a need's been communicated many times. And most organizations link the tools and the time to identify the gaps we've discussed today, and they really don't have that at this moment. So, you know, our thoughts were, if you wish you'd known the kinks in your supply chain armor before this battle began, then maybe, or before even next time, right? They say this could happen again. How do you establish that information to have that assessment done and know where that scalability is and where you might have some kinks in your supply chain? And so, you know, you can definitely look at all of the different pieces of the pie and say, how do we do an assessment and how do we look at our information? And so TI is offering an assessment that we can do for you at no cost. If you're interested, go to our website, look at it. Also, feel free to reach out to Reed and I via LinkedIn. We can definitely share that with you. I guess at this point, any questions?
Yes, thank you, Robyn and Reed. That was a fantastic presentation, and we do have a couple of questions. So the first one is, what is the biggest, most overlooked challenge to a retailer who is trying to begin a BOPUS channel?
Well, I kind of talked a little bit about that, Amanda. It's really, you know, one of the big challenges is knowing where your inventory is, right? It's hard to drive profitability if you have 3 or 4 people looking for a product a consumer had ordered. It's also, you know, you've got to make sure that you know where that inventory is as well so that you can provide that consumer the benefit of, hey, it's ready and you can take care of it now. I'll give you an example. Yesterday, the light in our pantry went out, and my husband said, I'm going to go online and order it, knowing that the stores that we typically order from either close at 6 or 7, right? He put the order in at 4 o'clock, and by 5:30, they had it waiting for us to pick up at the store. So, really understanding where your inventory sits and how much of it you have can really impact, buy online, pick up in store. It's also good to really look at how are you communicating that to your client. So, the communication to the consumer is huge. If it's via text or email, is it true to form? Is it really coming as quickly as they say it will? Those are all pieces that help in building up BOPUS for sure.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, the next question is, how do you see capacity being impacted post-COVID?
Boy, and that's a million-dollar question. I'll let you answer that one, Reed.
Why? Do I have the crystal ball? Is that why I get this question?
Yeah, I guess so.
No, I think what you see in the marketplace, I think we talked a little bit about it from a parcel perspective. UPS volume has shifted dramatically to the residential deliveries because commercial businesses, if they're non-essential, have been closed down or limited as far as their volumes. Whereas since everyone is working remotely, they're ordering online and having residential deliveries. So the networks are getting clogged in those aspects. The residential deliveries require more driving, they require more labor, more cost. So what's going to happen post-COVID as companies come out of this is that the parcel carriers are going to want to try to rebalance their network. They're going to drive commercial customers to commercial customers and try to entice them to come back on board as quickly as possible. So I think that you're going to see a tightening in the retail home delivery residential part of the network, but the commercial carriers, the commercial deliveries are going to become more important to the carriers. The other thing that this reference to is similar to an article we read earlier in Supply Chain Drive, Bullwhip on Crack, talking about the TP toilet paper supply chain. Basically, as orders have ramped up, supply chains have been struggling to try to maintain the consistency in production and delivering the product. There's going to be a bullwhip on all products as we start to roll back into it. When you add to that the fact that many people are projecting this to come out during the beginning of school season, as Robyn mentioned earlier, that just adds one more volume challenge on top of everything else that we're seeing. So it is going to be a tight capacity across multiple modes.
Well, and Reed, while you were talking, I actually got a text question. So one of the questions is, do you see any of the carriers performing much better on the parcel side than others? And I'll answer this. Not really. When you look at the statistics that UPS, FedEx, DHL, and even some of the regional carriers are offering out in the market, it's that humongous influx that we talked about earlier with the commercial versus residential swing has really put a lot of them behind the 8 ball. They're doing a great job in terms of meeting that need, but they're definitely all hitting areas that struggle. Where I would say we are seeing a little bit difference is dependent on the area of the country, right? And how they perform in each of those regions specific. So, there's definitely some information on Transportation Insights blog and the website that talks a little bit about that. If you have more questions, feel free to ask. But, it's really based on not the carrier specifically, but more the region of the country. And you have to keep in mind, too, that a lot of the people a lot of the retailers that consumers are purchasing off of now, they're lacking some labor and capabilities to get into some of their facilities. So fulfillment times have increased too. So where a lot of consumers may be looking and going, hey, it's FedEx or UPS's fault that we're struggling, sometimes it's not necessarily all their fault. It's a mix of the inability for the retailer or manufacturer to get to the product to actually pack it and provide it to FedEx and UPS and DHL to deliver. And that's where some of the leaders in supply chain that we work with, having those distribution centers and those warehouse partners that are labeled 3PL and essential, have helped because they have the product and can pull it and fulfill those orders in a timely manner.
Great, thank you. That was an excellent question. I'm glad someone texted you that. The last one, no, really, that was a great question. The last one that we have here is, how do I navigate delivering to my consumer for receiving products based on the way the country is split, closed and open or not open? How do you navigate that?
Yeah, so that's a tough one too. It's kind of Reed's crystal ball he mentioned. It's all going to depend on, understanding the area where you're trying to ship that product. There's a lot of information out there that you can find, through the blogs and online. Reela did a very lengthy call a couple of weeks ago talking about it. And one of the struggles that retailers and manufacturers are having in getting information out is that it's actually, not just the country, but it's state by state, it's county by county, it's even in some cases city. So having partners in that area that you can reach out to, or, leaders in 3PL, 4PL that could walk you through those different pieces of how the country's set in place, can really matter. And so that's important in knowing that and understanding those pieces of the pie. Also, there's a lot of information that you can find by looking at each of the state's websites. If you're looking at specific areas of the country, that's huge as well. So it walks you through, I'll give you an example. I live in Georgia. And so if you go to the Georgia Department of Labor website, you can see a lot of information on what they're allowing to be open, what they're not allowing to be open, if there's any areas that are not following those regulations. And so there's a lot of information there as well. And we've worked to consolidate that for some of our clients too. Reed, do you have anything else to add to that?
No, I think you covered it very well, Robyn.
Okay. Thank you. And I know I said that was the last question, but we actually had one more come in just now, so I will be asking that. And that question is, I know no one has a crystal ball, but in your opinion, will the USPS cut back on service to save costs? There is again talk of the Postal Service failing, and if so, there goes Amazon, UPS SurePost, and FedEx SmartPost. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think there is definitely an alarm out there that's being rung on the USPS, but I think that it's one of those things that it's too large to fail. You've talked about the number of employees that the USPS has in the U.S. The role that it plays in the U.S. economy is just so large. I think that a lot of the alarms are part of rattling the sabers in the negotiation. As President Trump has sent his message out to kind of prepare Amazon for what is coming in the future and what the expectations are. But I think from the standpoint of the U.S. economy, the post office has a significant role in getting those residential and final mile deliveries done. And so while there will be some changes and some things that are going to be done, Amazon and players rely too heavily on them to let them fail. Robyn, what are your thoughts on that topic as well?
Yeah, agree with you, Reed. I would say the only thing I'd like to add is, when you look at UPS SurePost and FedEx SmartPost, right, they sound the same, and in general you think they're the same, but they're really different. But both actually leveraged price increases, a year and a half ago. And so I would expect to see that Amazon's going to fall in that same boat, right? We've seen the diversion of FedEx away from Amazon. A lot of UPS's residential delivery is impacted due to Amazon. So I can see that maybe they may raise the price for Amazon, which, we all know is going to mean that they're going to raise the price of goods, right? But I don't see them going, cutting back service to cut cost. If anything, I see maybe the cost slightly increasing like they did for UPS SmartPost and FedEx, or UPS SurePost and FedEx SmartPost. And I think that's where you're really going to see the challenge. They've got, the other piece, the big problem with the Postal Service, based on what you read from experts, is really all of the safe money they have to keep. So there may not actually be a need to raise prices if they can get the government to agree to the changes in retirement and that safe, slush fund they have to keep handy for all of their employees. So, I think that you may see changes there too. So, I don't think they're going to cut back cost or cut back service. I think we may come to see just a slight increase to some of the providers.
Great, thank you so much. Well, that's all the questions that we have for today. So once again, I want to thank both Robyn and Reed for a fantastic, very informative presentation. That was wonderful. I got a lot out of it. I'm sure our readers did too. We'd like to once again thank Transportation Insight for sponsoring this webinar, and I'd like to thank all of you for attending today. So just a reminder that you can view it again at any point over the coming year if you want to, review something or check something out or share it with a colleague. And I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their day. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.